everybody. Welcome to the Mill Valley Public Library. I'm Natalie Snoyman, acting supervising archivist of the library's history room, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our Dipsea storytelling night. First, a huge thank you to the Friends of the Library and the Library Foundation for making events like this possible. We're so lucky to have their ongoing support. And if you'd like to return the favor, the Friends are here tonight. If you'd like to say hello, they're around the corner, and learn how to volunteer. It's a great way to support the library. And they're also selling merch tonight. I also want to thank my incredible library colleagues for being here and working late to make tonight's after hours event possible. So, a little bit about my own connection to the Dipsea. I started working in the archives here in May 2020, and in those first very strange weeks while the library was shut down to the public, I started familiarizing myself with the history room's collections, and I was immediately drawn to the lore of the Dipsea Race. Soon after, I set out from Old Mill Park to hike the trail one weekend, totally unaware that the shuttle from Stinson wasn't running due to COVID, of course. So my very first experience on the trail was an accidental double Dipsea. But in the years since, I've fallen in love with the race's history and the incredible stories it produces. This year, I got brave enough to throw my name into the hat, so I'll be running my very first race just a couple weeks, next week. So I'm thrilled and, yes, very scared to officially be part of this incredible local tradition. Now I'm honored to introduce someone who knows the Dipsea very well, Paddy O'Leary. Paddy's a professional and wildly talented trail runner, cancer biologist, community leader, film producer, and former international lacrosse player. He was born and raised on a dairy farm in southeastern Ireland, and just this week earned a spot on the Irish mountain running team for September's World's Long Trail Championships. Paddy and his team came to me with this idea, and he's been an incredible partner in organizing tonight's event. He's a fierce competitor and a gifted storyteller with an obvious deep love for this race and the local running community. Many of you probably know him as the winner of the 2023 Dipsea. I'm so grateful to have him here tonight and you all here tonight, and I'm really excited for the stories we're about to hear. So please join me in welcoming our MC, Paddy O'Leary.
Thanks, Natalie. Welcome, everybody. So I'm delighted to welcome you all here to this stunning Mill Valley Public Library. We're right here at the foot of the iconic Dipsea stairs, how apt. Tonight's storytelling event stemmed from our Dipsea Generations documentary project. This project's goal is to highlight different youth running programs across the Bay Area and bring young runners from these programs together to race in the 114th Dipsea Race. Two of my collaborating filmmakers are here. Shout out to Nicole and Tony. Nicole Amix and Tony Di Pascali are here. Put your hands up. Down in the back. Our other collaborator, Ryan, is back in the city with his two young kids, so we couldn't drag him out here this evening. As well as following the 5 young runners, and one of them is here tonight, Andre. I'll mention him later. As well as following these 5 young runners and their families in the journey to the Dipsea Race, we've also interviewed characters from all across the Dipsea community. In fact, we interviewed the Dipsea historian and storyteller, Barry Spitz, and then multiple-time Dipsea champion, Diana Fitzpatrick, downstairs here in the library's history room. Thanks to Natalie, my co-organizer tonight, for opening that space and resource up to us. We will plan to release these full-length interviews on our YouTube channel and also store them here in the library, adding to this, or online with the library's archive, adding to the spectacular archive of Dipsea history we have here. So do subscribe to our YouTube channel, tap that like button and all that stuff, to keep eye out for that release. So throughout this project, our primary focus was on the stories of our young runners, of Lily, of Daniel, of Anthony, Andre, and Karina. But we only had so much time that we could dedicate to interviews with all these other characters across the Dipsea Race. It seemed like such a shame, a race that has now 120 years of history, and we could only do 8 full-length interviews. So a few weeks ago, I was attending a storytelling event in the city. It's called Porchlight, and an idea sneaked into my mind. Let's do a storytelling night. Let's try to get as many people up here to tell their Dipsea story as possible. So with many great submissions, we had many great submissions during our open call, but we had the challenge of narrowing it down to tonight's 12 speakers. So for our run of show tonight, I'm going to call up each speaker. I'll introduce them and their story title, and then the floor is theirs for the next 5 minutes. We have 12 stories to get through tonight, so Natalie and I will be running a tight ship with our stopwatches. And at the 5-minute mark, we have a bit of a comical warning that will further emphasize that the time is up. We're not afraid to use that warning. So thank you so much to every person who submitted their story, to all the speakers tonight, to the staff here at the Mill Valley Library, and to each and every one of you for being part of this wholesome Dipsea community. Let the stories begin. So first up, we've David Leipsic, and he's going to tell a story about Jerry Leath, the Dipsea maverick, banned for life twice.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I want to share a story of a good friend of mine. His name was Jerry Leath, and as you heard Paddy say, yeah, he was banned twice for life from the Dipsea. But my story actually starts with the famous Dipsea salmon barbecue runs that Jerry orchestrated, organized back in the 1990s through the 90s. And I want to see a show of hands out there. Anybody out here remembered and participated in these Dipsea salmon runs? Yeah, these were just the highlight of the week. There were Thursday nights, 2 in April, 2 in May, and Jerry'd be on the phone and he'd be calling people and he'd be organizing the potluck and he'd be organizing the salmon and he'd be organizing the carpools back way before the day of texting. Anyhow, at these events, one of the things that Jerry liked to do, or would commonly do, would have an auction, and he'd auction off some running shoes. And then he started to get the idea when runners couldn't run the Dipsea who had been admitted, that he would maybe auction off their bibs if you hadn't gotten into the race. So he got the great idea that, okay, I'll start auctioning off bibs, and that maybe will raise some money for these events. And then he started facilitating trading bibs. Well, that was his first banning from the Dipsea. When they got word of that, they were like, no, you will not be doing that anymore, and you will be banned from the Dipsea for life. And that was even after, in 2000, when he had won the prestigious Jerry Hockey Award for leadership, for dedication, and for sportsmanship. So that was 2001. Jerry was a really colorful figure. He was a maverick before his time. He was a kind of a big, gregarious guy who used to run in those tight dolphin running shorts that we ran in the 1980s, but he kept running in them through the 90s and into the early 2000s. I have a vision of him running around Phoenix Lake. He had 2 hip replacements, and he was a big guy. He was a football coach, and he coached with Bill Walsh at one time. Anyway, running around Phoenix Lake, hobbling, pain was not in his vocabulary. So he became the president of Tamalpa Runners, and he introduced a lot of people like me to the Dipsea Race and brought a lot of people into the club and promoted the Dipsea through these salmon barbecue runs. Then he finally got the idea that he was going to do more for the Dipsea after he had already been banned the first time, that he would go up there and try to clear cut the poison oak from the course. Well, bless his heart, because it probably saved a lot of us from poison oak through the swoop. He got up there without permits, without permission, and went ahead and got a crew of people, and they did a nice clear cut all the way through the swoop without any permits from GGNRA or blessings from the Dipsea. Now, Jerry, again, he was the kind of guy that his motto was, it's easier to seek forgiveness than ask permission. So he just went ahead and he did that. Dipsea committee gets word again of that after already rescinding his first banning, and they banned him again for life. Jerry's motto, when they asked him what he wanted on his epitaph, was, don't stop. And he would go, and he would go, and he would go. Sadly, he died of cancer in 2011 and left us with a big memory of his salmon runs, which kind of left with him too. We carried him on for a few years after he had passed away, but they also went the way of Jerry Leath. Now, when you run the Dipsea stairs and you see his name on a plaque towards the top, it just says Jerry Leath, you can think to yourself, this was the Dipsea maverick who really brought a lot of people to us, and when you see his name on that plaque, think, don't stop. Thank you very much.
Okay, next up we have Lindy Beale. And Lindy's story, early life lessons on the trail, 3 generations and 1 trail.
Hello. So the Dipsea has been part of my family's DNA for 3 generations. My grandfather, Ernie Marinoni, won the race in 1940, and he was a member of the Petaluma Spartans, and he would tell me stories of how they would camp out on Mount Tam and train for the race. I grew up in the late 60s and 70s running the race with my dad, Pax Beiel, and although my dad was a Dipsea runner, it was not by lineage. He actually learned about the race from my mother when they were dating at Cal, and they went over to Stinson to watch my grandfather and her father, Ernie, cross the finish line. So when I was young, the race was held at the end of August. So at the start of every summer, after my dad's work, we would head on over for weekly training runs with other Dipsea enthusiasts, followed by a picnic dinner at Stinson and lots of Dipsea talk. And my dad and I also trained on our own. And I vividly remember one weekend training run when I was 12 years old. That day, the temperature was already hot when we arrived in Mill Valley, and it promised to be a scorcher. Since I was slower than my dad, he gave me a handicap, and I took off ahead of him. And I knew the race like the back of my hand. I made it through Old Mill Park, up the multitude of wayward stairs, over to Barnyard Road, and then through the strategic shortcut between the houses at the top of Windy Gap, which would go straight down to, which was the fastest way down to Muir Woods. And as I ran, I kept wondering, well, where's my dad? And wondering when he would catch up with me. Well, finally, as I was about to enter the rainforest, I was surprised to see him coming toward me. And he told me that he had taken a shortcut, and that's why he was ahead of me. And of course, I believed him. And until I learned later, that wasn't, in fact, the truth. He was a DNF that day, a did not finish. You might say, in fact, he was a DNS, did not start. At least on that day. The heat had felled him early on, so he turned around soon after taking off when he realized he couldn't catch me. He got his car, drove to Pantole, where he backtracked to find me. And for some, this might be an example of too much freeform parenting. But for me, the self-reliance, confidence, strength, and sense of adventure I gained as a 12-year-old girl navigating the Dipsea on my own that day, and countless others since then, instilled traits and values that have shaped my entire life. And for that, I'm forever grateful. Thank you.
Oh, that was great. So next up, we have Mark Byers, and Mark's story, a very brief history of the running the Dipsea in the 1960s.
Thank you, Paddy. And Lindy, your dad was a legend. In the summer of '65, I was 17 when I ran my first Dipsea. Then the entry fee was $1. You could sign up for the race on race day. This was the first year of the aged handicapped system. There were no women, no young kids, just a few older people. We were mostly high school and college runners. The finish line used to be in front of the Parkside Cafe, and there were 190 finishers that year. I grew up in Novato. I was a junior at Novato High in the fall of '63 when I went out for the cross-country team for the first time. By '65, I was running with a group of other Novato runners who were members of the local running club, the Marin AC. I ran every Dipsea from 1965 to 1971. For the next 6 years, we spent summers training for the Dipsea. It was the highlight of the summer. Dipsea was held on the last Sunday in August back then. Weekdays, we'd run 8 to 10 miles in the hills and on the roads around Novato. On weekends, we'd travel to AAU races all over Northern California. From the Holy City Run outside Santa Cruz to the 72-mile Lake Tahoe Relay. Marin had 2 great races back in those days. In June, there was the 6.5-mile Novato Ridge Run, and in July, the 8.9-mile Tiburon Run. The road trips to those AAU races were an adventure. Everyone would kick in whatever they could for gas. 75 cents, a buck. Gas was 25 cents a gallon then. On these trips, we'd sleep just about anywhere we could, on the floor of someone's house, a park, or even on the side of a road. Sundays, we'd run a time trial over the Dipsea. Afterwards, we'd hang out at the beach all day. We were self-coached. We made up our own workouts. The 2 main brands of running shoes then were Adidas and Puma. The only way to get Adidas was through mail order, excuse me. You could not buy a decent pair of running shoes anywhere in Marin County. Flying Goose Sporting Goods in San Francisco, anybody remember that? Didn't think so. Oh, there we go, okay, well, you would have known that, okay. So, yes, Flying Goose did sell Pumas, and they had a few other good brands. I had 1 pair of running shoes I used for both racing and training, and as you all know, today's models are so far superior to those that we ran in the 60s. There was one guy who ran the Sunday time trials. I think his name was Jerry. One Sunday, he shows up in a pair of soccer cleats. He thought that would be a good idea. No. In 65 Dipsea, of the 190 finishers, 179 ran from scratch. 16 of the top 20 places were scratch runners. The Marin AC, my team, won the team trophy. After the race, a reporter from the Independent Journal asked one of our young runners for his impression of the Dipsea. This 15-year-old running in his first Dipsea replied, "The Dipsea has a little of everything. Uphills, downhills, not much of the level though." From a small group of mostly Novato runners, 4 have some pretty impressive Dipsea records. These 4 have between them 7 fastest time trophies, 3 first high school trophies, 3 course records. All 4 in the Dipsea Hall of Fame. They are Carl Jensen. He was the last scratch runner to win the Dipsea in 1966. Carl was later drafted into the Army in '67 while serving in Vietnam, and he was severely injured in a landmine explosion. Carl passed away in 2017. His ashes were scattered on the Dipsea. Don Macklin and Ron Elijah, the 2 of them have the 4 fastest times ever recorded. I was lucky, and finally Bob Bonnell, besides 2 fastest time trophies, Bob held the quad Dipsea course record. I was lucky to live and run in Marin when I did. That Dipsea no longer exists. When I was younger, it was about how fast you ran and what place you finished. I'm getting there. Now looking back, It's about the memories and the friends we made. And the Dipsea was a big part of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark. And thank you, Barry Spitz, for that little nudge at the 5-minute mark. Next up, we have Simone Adams, and Simone's story is The Slug Patrol.
Hi, everyone. So we've been hearing a lot about fast racers, uphill, downhill. This is a little bit of a slower, it slows you down in the middle of all of this, all these talks. So year over year, my training partner, Sid, and I would protect all of the banana slugs we saw on the trail, particularly those near the footbridge in Muir Woods. We learned quickly that they are quite sticky to the touch, so we hoisted them off the trails using 2 twigs splinted on both sides, sometimes leaves. It took us a little bit of scrambling to figure out what we could use to pick them up. So we hoisted them off the trails, and it slowed us down a bit, but it was well worth the effort, knowing these ultra-slow moving creatures of the moist forest would be saved. The Slug Patrol was born out of compassion to save the amazing Dipsea slugs from getting stomped on and smashed by unaware racers. Making comparisons between Dipsea racers and slugs, slugs come in different sizes and colors. Like Dipsea racers, slugs respect the redwoods. They eat everything but the trees. And like the Dipsea scratch runners, slugs patrol themselves forward from the tail section of their body to the front. Slugs travel a whopping 3 inches, up to 30 feet an hour. So don't worry, they'll never outrun you on the Dipsea. Breathing, it's done a bit differently for the slugs. They breathe through a hole on the side of their head, which in the rainy season closes up. So to finish, the Dipsea is the official oldest foot race in the US, and banana slugs are the official slug of California.
Are we all expected to carry a little, slug stretcher in the race now? The Dipsea finishing times just collapse this year. Okay, next up, we have Jason Pedrick. And Jason's story is, met my biological parents for the first time.
Let me take this thing off here. Hello, everybody. My name is Jason. I was lucky enough to grow up here in Mill Valley. Went to TAM. I graduated in 2004. Played football and ran track there, and been running my whole life. Surprisingly, I've only run the Dipsea 3 times, but this last time was by far the most impactful and surreal because it was the first time I met my biological parents. I was adopted at birth. I grew up with a little brother and a little sister who were also adopted, and we were never told about our adoption growing up. But as we got older, we started to kind of figure it out because my little sister was half Japanese. My little brother was like a redhead with freckles, and my mom was Chinese. So once we got into high school, we started to get it. And I think, like many adoptees, I really struggled as I got older on whether or not I wanted to kind of look for my family and try to figure out who they were because, you fear of rejection. You fear about what you could have been the product of or who they were or who they are now. But ultimately, at the age of 36, I decided to push that button on 23andMe that opens you up to DNA relatives. And lucky for me, my one significant match was my grandfather. He's 83 years old. He lives in Laguna Beach, California. And I reached out to him, tried to connect with him, didn't hear back. And this is a much longer part of the story. But over the period of like the next 6 months, did a lot of outreach to him and everybody in his family. Didn't hear back. Did a lot of additional research trying to figure out more about my story. And ended up leaning into some volunteers who helped me kind of figure out where I came from. And they ultimately found out who my biological parents were, and I got in touch with them and got in touch with everybody else, and we started talking. And we would talk a couple times a week, and over a period of a couple of months, we got to know each other a bit. And I was living in Asheville, North Carolina at the time, and I was coming home to run the Dipsea. And so I figured might as well invite them and meet them for the first time. And so they agreed, and both of my parents had been friends the whole time, so they came up together. And the night before the Dipsea, we met down at the depot, and I'm walking down there, and I'm nervous as all hell, and my heart's beating through my chest, and my eye is twitching like crazy. I couldn't control it, and we meet at the depot, and we get along great. It's like we'd known each other for decades, and we walked down to Joe's Taco Lounge, and I found out they don't make that Mexican pizza anymore, and I almost lost it, but I kept my composure in front of these new friends of mine, and we had a blast, right? And that night, it was hard to sleep. I was really, really focused on impressing them the next morning on the Dipsea. I really, really wanted to PR. I was fit. I was ready to run sub 65, and I wanted to show them who I am and what I'm made of. And that next morning, I woke up, and I'm fired up. My heart rate is already 140 as soon as I get up, right? Walk down to the depot. I'm getting warmed up. I'm trying to look light on my feet, and I'm feeling good. And I hear my wave called, and I walk up to the starting line. I'm standing next to the legends like Paddy and Varner, and I'm trying to look like I'm all business, looking at my watch and my shoes, and then this kind of sensation of a second-grade old boy comes over me, and I kind of look up, looking for my parents, and I see them, and they're standing there, and they're looking at me, and I get real nervous, and I kind of smile and look back down, try to look serious, and then the gun goes off, and I take off, and I'm trying to keep up with these guys, and we're running to the stairs at like a sub 5-minute pace, and we get to the bottom of the stairs, and I'm like, that was dumb, and we get to the top of the stairs, and I'm cooked, and my heart rate's like 180 by that point, and I still have 5-6 miles to go, and so I barely hang on the rest of the race. I'm surviving, but I get to the bottom of cardiac, and I'm like crawling up cardiac. And at the top of the cardiac, I'm pretty depressed, like disappointed in myself. I really wanted to impress them. I really let myself down because I was ready to PR, and I didn't have it that day because I just went out too fast. I get down to Stinson, I take that left to go to the finish line, and I'm trying to look strong and finish good, and I see them at the end, and I run up to them, and they're stoked for me, and I just kind of realized, like, they don't know what a good Dipsea time is, right? Like, what is a good Dipsea time? Isn't that the beauty of the Dipsea, is that the fastest people never win? So we had a great time the rest of the day. We spent the day in Mill Valley and hung out in the city, and one of the funny things I came to find out was that from 1996 to 2003, my dad lived in Santa Fe, and he was the manager of Mike's Bikes in Sausalito. Mike's Bikes is where I grew up going to get all my bikes. The TAM distance team would run there on our easy days before meets, and in high school, it's where we would stand outside the bait shop and ask guys to buy us beer. The craziest part about that is, when you pull off of 101 North and you go under the bridge and come to that stoplight to wait to go into the Mike's Bikes parking lot, there's a house perfectly framed between the trees across Richardson Bay at the end of Strawberry Point. It's the only house you can see when you're sitting there, and that's the house I grew up in. So every single day that my dad pulled into work, he was looking at the house that his son was growing up in, and he had no idea I existed. So last year, my wife and I and our 2 kids moved to Laguna Beach, where all my family still lives, and all my grandparents are still with us, and we're making up on 39 years of lost time, and my 2 kids have 10 grandparents now, so it's been a fun journey. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, David. That was great. And I was also regretting that 4:30-minute mile start at the bottom of the stairs, and I think most of the wave was too. Sorry. Next up, we have Etta Blanchard and her story, A Hornet's Nest and the Bees Weren't Playing That Day.
Good evening, everyone. and all my Dipsea friends. I see a few of you out there, Lindy, Beale, Marilyn. There's a lot, and I'm honored to be here with you tonight. I want to introduce you to my mother, Mary Lucille Boitano. She's here with us. My mom is amazing. My mom has run probably 8 Dipseas, 5 double Dipseas, 50 marathons, had 7 kids, 7 children. I was the 7th. And she's going to be 102 next month. So I love her to death. It's payback time, and the cardiologist wants me to put her on the treadmill a half an hour a day. So she does a half a mile on the treadmill, still going strong and doing well. So cheers to my mom. My brother Michael would be here today, but he doesn't have a heart for the spotlight. So he's a little shy, but I'm trying to get him to run the Dipsea. So I've sort of got my husband walking over the Dipsea and my 2 sons running it. So hopefully the legacy continues, because I'm getting too old now and it's been difficult for me to run, but I'm a liability out there. And sometimes I have to take a cab to my own bathroom. But now it's an Uber, it's not a cab anymore. But anyway, my father was a Dipsea runner as well, and my father did 13 Dipseas, and his best place was 39th, the year I won. And my brother is a 2-time Dipsea winner, and he won in 71 and 72. He would have been the first person in history to win it 3 times consecutively. You had Millard, you had Hazen, and you had Jack Kirk won in 51 and in 67, the year before I ran. So Mike would have won it 3 times, and it was a big deal in the house for him to win, but he got upset, and his upset was a big deal in the household because he was upset by his younger sister, and that was me. So it was bittersweet for me, but and very disappointing for my brother. And so let me get on to my story. Paddy, kudos to you for doing this, because this is amazing. This is really bringing the Irish culture into our life, which is wonderful. So kudos to you. I love it. So he came to my house, and he came with Ryan. I don't know if Ryan's here tonight, but Ryan's tall, and he barely fit through the doorway. But he was doing all the camera work, and they asked questions about the Dipsea, one after the other, and I was trying to rapid fire back at him. But so it opened a can of worms for me, because my first Dipsea was at age 5. And it was in 1968, so if you do the math, you know how old I am. I'm 62. But anyway, so my mom worked all night on our outfits. We were South End Rowing Club members, so we had a white shirt, and we called them red running togs. We didn't call them shorts, but we called them togs. So I was supposed to be running with my dad's partner's son, Johnny, who was 15, and I was 5. So he was supposed to kind of take me over the course until my dad was able to catch up to me, because I had only been over the course. This was my 3rd time. So the 3rd time, so I didn't know the course at all. Oh, is that my... Oh, good. I didn't know the course at all, and so not very well. So I was running it. I was running down Throckmorton, hit the steps, look around for Johnny, and he's not there. I'm all alone. So I was kind of scared to death in a way, because now I have to figure out and navigate through the course on my own. So The third flight of steps was not there at all. What there were at the third flight of steps, and Lindy could tell you, she was running it with me. And that race in 1968, at the start, I started with Jack Kirk, and I started with a kid named Mike Wolford. Mike Wolford was 11 years old, and he was groomed by Jack Kirk, so those guys were tight as can be. But in that race, those guys were running against one another. Oh God, I gotta hurry. Well, anyway, I'm up in Dynamite, and I felt something go up my shorts, and it was painful. And I started to cry, and I look around, and there's a guy going like this. And I said to him, I go, "Oh my God, what is it? What is that?" And he said, "Somebody knocked over a nest." And so there were hornets everywhere. We were getting stung left and right. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bites. And so I'm maneuvering through the course. I'm feeling the bees were angry. They were angry. So I wasn't quite sure. This was a repressed memory. This was something that came from a long time ago. I wasn't sure if it was real. So I just had my friend Christy, she came up to me and she said, "I saw the title of your speech." And I said, "Yeah." She said, "That happened to me too." And then Lindy collaborated on it. Those two are cousins, so they worked together. Craig probably got stung too. I wasn't the only one that got stung. So I was so happy. I took solace into thinking that I wasn't the only one that got stung. But at that point, there was a strange calm that came over me. And I'm a Seinfeld fan, so I'm using those references. It's kind of funny. I do it every day. But anyway, so this strange calm came over me. The bees were angry that day, my friends. And I became that Dipsea runner, and I said, I can do it. I know I'm little, but I can do it. I got shoved over multiple times. People were shoving me from the left to the right of the trail because they said, "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be on the trail. You're a little kid." And they thought I was a boy. So the whole time, they thought I was a boy. So anyway, I was thumbing through Jack Kirk's book. I'm thumbing through it. Not Jack Kirk, Barry Spitz. Sorry, Barry. I was thumbing through his book about 1968 because I want to remember, what really went on in that race. Because I'm getting stung by a bunch of bees, and 2 miles down the ahead of me. Meanwhile, they're in the hunt. Mike Wilford, Jack Kirk, and Don Pickett, Mr. Dipsea. And so anyway, I'm thumbing through the book. Don wins the race because Mike Wilford, he was on his way to win, but Don got him. And so what happened was there were 11 scratch runners that day, 11 that had broken the barrier for 50 minutes. And nobody has done that since. 50 scratch runners. And my theory, I don't usually talk this much, but anyway, my theory is they got stung by bees and they were running for their lives. And that's exactly what happened. Yeah. So, meanwhile, I finished my race. I get my little, popsicle stick at the end. The guy reaches down like this, hands me 441 because that's the place I came in. Not too bad because there's 906 entered. And I know that because looking through pictures of me, I could see 906 on the top of my shirt. So I knew I was an afterthought. I knew that my parents didn't know if I was going to be able to run. So anyway, so the point is, I got a trophy. They gave me a participant's trophy where women were not allowed, to actually, they were unofficial in the race. So they actually acknowledged me, the Dipsea Committee, so I feel quite fortunate that they did that, which is wonderful. And Lindy is from a family that she has Elaine Peterson, who is Pax's significant other, And she was my idol. Lindy's Elaine Peterson was an idol for me. She would wear a little tennis skirt. And, oh, I better go. Sorry. Okay, I'm gone.
Thank you so much. Okay, so next up, we had actually saved so much time. We're like, oh, we have so much time, and then it started ticking away and away and away and away. But in fairness, you did admit beforehand a few days ago, you're like, I am the one that's going to run over, so make sure to keep me in line. So next up, we have Linda Clever, and Linda's story, Now Hold My Hand.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. A special thanks to Susan Simpkin, who's a typical Mill Valley good neighbor who let me know about this evening to give me a chance to talk with you about my husband, Jamie Clever. He was a familiar early morning sight on the Glen Drive end of Mill Valley with its roads and its fire trails as he trained for decades for his 31 years in a row of running the Dipsea. He wedged his daily runs before he left for his San Francisco internal medicine office, where nurses and doctors and other patients sought the insightful care from his warm, smart, quiet, droll physician. Jamie would be here if he could this evening. He has a devastating brain disease called cerebral amyloid angiopathy, and he can't travel. Perhaps his grueling training when he was captain of the Stanford crew prepared him for the Dipsea. At any rate, he was intent on doing well in the Dipsea and finished in the shirts 7 times. On the other hand, I like to take short walks and long naps. As the enthusiastic fan-in-chief, I was in charge of our post-race picnic festivities with friends. In 1974, our 4-year-old daughter, Sarah, and I were clustered with others at the finish line, craning our necks to see the runners. We heard the crowd cheers shifting from go, 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 to oh no, oh my God. We soon saw Jamie running as best he could with a jagged chunk of bleeding flesh hanging down from his right cheek. He'd fallen coming down the last hill. Knowing that he needed medical care, he ran as fast as he could to get it. Sarah remembers her feet and legs extending back horizontally as I dragged her by the hand and raced to meet him at the finish. Our picnic friends saw what had happened, cleared the table, and followed us in their cars to Marin General Hospital, ER. I probably surpassed the speed limit as I headed there. Once at the hospital, Jamie was whisked into an examining room, checked, and then sent to X-ray. Sarah stayed close by, her beloved Poppy, as I navigated registration with name, address, insurance, and so forth. And I also searched for a plastic surgeon who was available to mend Jamie on a Sunday morning. With those details taken care of, I threaded my way back to Jamie's examining room, and I found him there lying on the examining table with Sarah standing as closely as she possibly could, holding his hand. She was shaken and pale. Sarah looked at me and softly said, "Now, Mommy, would you please hold my hand?" And I did. After the plastic surgeon's artistry was completed and Jamie was being discharged, our Dipsea Race Day picnic friends who had waited in the waiting room approached, relieved and smiling. They'd visited the Marin General gift shop and found the most perfect get well card ever. They handed Jamie the card. The front of the card said, "Run into a little trouble?" It's true. Jamie finished 44th that day. healed just fine, kept on racing, and had only a bit of a scar and a mini facelift on his right cheek.
Oh, that was great. Okay, next up, we have Marilyn Kiernan. And Marilyn's story, drinking or running, choose your addiction.
I have never walked the Dipsea. I have never run the Dipsea. I don't want to see the Dipsea again. But there we go. That was my life. And it was certainly Russ's life. He absolutely loved it. He had to be carried out in his last race. He would not quit. He stopped at the aid station, and they said, "You really need to stop." He said, "Well, I think I can make it." "Okay, we can't stop you." So I don't have any idea. I've never walked the Dipsea. I don't know where anything is. The next step was a steep hill going down, and he thought he could make it. So at the bottom of the hill, he collapsed. And it took, I'm counting here, I have a picture. I think there are at least 10 people carrying him out. And I said, "Russ, you should be ashamed of yourself." And he said, "Oh, I loved it." My daughter, Carrie, was there to meet him, and I had to clean up the picnic. I was the slave of the Dipsea. So I didn't know where he was. None of us knew where he was, and I had to take all these things away. And we met him up on the top of one of the hills, and the ambulance was there. And one of the children that I taught in kindergarten was one of the EMTs. So I thought, well, that's a good thing. We know him. I'm sure he'll be all right. The last Dipsea he ran, which is what we were talking about, we had 2 people from Florida who would come to run the Dipsea. One was a relative and one was his friend. Russ was getting dementia very seriously. We went out to dinner with these guys. It was late. By the time we ate dinner, it was 8 o'clock. They came from Florida, mind you. Russ decided to show them some of the places they would be on the race. We got in the car. I said, "Russ, they want to go to bed. I just want to show them this one thing. It's after dark. We see a Walsh Drive." He points down, "That's Walsh Drive." "Okay, thanks, Russ." It was ridiculous, but he just was so excited about having these people. They'd come before, and they always got in the race. When we finally found him, I said, "As I told you, you should be ashamed." He said, "It was wonderful." So I brought some pictures for you to see. It took about 10 people to carry him back up that hill that he had skidded down, and he loved it. He said, "Oh, it was so beautiful." He was stoned out of his mind. The trees were gorgeous. That was his last and most infamous Dipsea, but everybody loved Russ. He was so kind to everybody. He took anyone over the course who wanted to see it, and I was so proud of him that I have now to wear his shirt forever. It's just very difficult to take it off. I don't want to hold you up because some people just love to talk. I will put these pictures. I have a few of these. You can see Russ's face. He's down here, and everyone else is carrying him in this huge sling, and he's loving every second of it. I'll put them over here for you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so next up, we have Bill Kimberlin. And Bill's going to tell us the story, Mason Hartwell's long-standing record.
First off, thank you for having me. So there was this guy named John Mason Hartwell, and he was a famous old-time Dipsea runner. But who was he? Where did he come from? Well, he came from my mother's family, the Mason family of Sausalito. He was a cousin of mine. I knew he was a runner in the Dipsea Race because my family had some stories about the race, but I really didn't know the details of his life until I wrote my book about working for George Lucas and on Star Wars. The book is called Inside the Star Wars Empire. In researching it, I also researched my family's history in Marin. My great-grandfather, John Mason, moved his brewery from San Francisco to Sausalito because you can't make good beer without good water, and by the late 1800s, the city location water was no longer pure. John Mason found the new location around 1890. It had 14 acres and a famous spring. So he was able to build not only a brewery, but also a distillery, which is now known as Whiskey Springs and is a condominium complex. Hartwell's father married my grandfather's sister, not my great-grandfather, my grandfather. And her name was Mary Mason, and their boy was Mason Hartwell. And he was born in Oakland, and while in high school, he had run the mile in 4 minutes, 45 seconds. It took until 1954 for Roger Bannister to break the 4-minute mile. So this was pretty good time for a high school kid. So the Olympic Club in San Francisco picked up Hartwell to sponsor in the Dipsea. Mason Hartwell has been called one of the greatest competitors in Dipsea history. He won the Best Time Award 7 times between 1910 and 1926, a record that stood for 74 years. In 1910, Mason won his first Best Time Award with a time of 52 minutes, 43 seconds. 16 years later, he won his last Best Time Award, which was only 11 seconds slower than his first. There was an account written by the San Francisco Chronicle sports writer Howard Smith of that last 1926 race, and I would like to read it to you. Their faces tell the story of the hard Dipsea Trail as the runners come down the road between the double bank of spectators at the Stinson Beach finish. Their tied-up leg muscles show the effects of unaccustomed strain. But there comes one coasting like a miler on a good track. There's a half smile on his face as he comes down the stretch. His legs work with an easy, loose-muscled action. It's Mason Hartwell, greatest of Dipsea runners. No trainer reaches to catch Hartwell as he crosses the finish line. Leave the cots and the rubbing for the youngsters. The veteran, fresh as a daisy and without resting, goes to join his family, for he has another race on that day's schedule. He has promised to swim out beyond the breakers with his 11-year-old daughter. Then, after the swim, Mason ran back to Mill Valley, making his a double Dipsea that day. He was 37 years old. Thank you.
It always fascinates me to think about what the course would have looked like back then, like 110 years ago. Even you see the videos and films from like the 80s, it looks so different. Imagine what it was like then. So our next story is Sharon Fox. And Sharon's story is The Dipsea, a Very Special Family.
Good evening. I was going to say, before I go, what Marietta forgot to say is her mother is 101, and she's going to be 102 in 1 month. So anyway. Anyway, I'm Sharon Fox, and my family has been running the Dipsea for over 100 years. The family tradition started when my great aunts, May and Minnie, who raised my dad, ran the race starting in 1909, disguised as boys because they wouldn't let women run until the 70s. They ran every year until 1912 and participated in the women's hike. When it was legal for women to run, my older sister Colleen continued the tradition and has run the Dipsea every year since 1970. That's more than half a century of running the Dipsea. She won the Dipsea practice in 1978 and came in second for the Dipsea practice in 1984, which is the same year that she was first woman to come in for the Tahoe 72-miler. And twice she ran 7 months pregnant, so we always say that her daughters ran the Dipsea before they were even born. After coming across the finish line in '84, a guy came up from the beach and he had these little short shorts on and a little tank top, and his arms were really hairy and his legs were really hairy, and she thought he looked very unique. Anyway, he came up to her and he said, "Oh, I just love the Dipsea course. Wow, so amazing watching you guys come in." And he says, "When I was a high schooler, I ran that course all the time. It's my favorite. I love it." And he says, "I've never run the race. How do I get in?" She goes, "Oh, talk to Walt Stack over there. He's the guy. He was the head of the Dolphin South Runners. And anyway, he can fill you in, and maybe he can work something out." So she led him over to Walt Stack, and Walt Stack's taking some notes. And he goes, "And your name is?" And he goes, "Robin Williams." It was Robin Williams. And actually, Colleen was shocked, and after that, she'd seen him running up because she was always running the trails. She saw him all the time. But years later, I bumped into him at a Mill Valley Film Festival event, and he was surrounded by a lot of other, movie people. And I said, "Hey," I said, "Robin, when are you going to run the Dipsea next?" And he just froze, and he had been, pretty animated up until that time, as you know how Robin is. And it was like a cannonball hit his heart. And he said, "Oh God, I just love that course." And he goes, "I'd do anything to run the Dipsea course again." He says, "But I trashed my knees, and I'm never going to run again." And he says, "But I just love that course." He says, "There's nothing like the Dipsea. I just love it. I just love it." And the people around him were like, "What's Dipsea?" And he said, "Well, the story about the lemmings that just follow each other over the cliff? It's like these crazy runners get up every year and run over the hill to Stinson Beach." And so anyway, what he did mention was love, and I'm going to get to that a little bit more later on. But my sister isn't here tonight because she's pretty shy. I mean, she's very bold, but in front of people, she's not one to toot her own horn or give you the stats on her amazing record before she had a work-related injury that slowed down her running. And she's not only spent years running this race, but also spent years supporting the Dipsea Foundation and honoring many of the Dipsea icons and heroes by providing foundation dinner tickets for them and their entire family, and donating to the Dipsea Foundation, and also purchasing Dipsea steps and the plaque that holds their name on it so that we don't forget those Dipsea elders, those heroes. And for years, she was a pen pal of Jack Kirk's, the Dipsea demon himself, and she always made sure he got his pound of See's candy for every birthday and every holiday, and she handpicked each piece. She knows the name of every single See's candy piece. She does. And she's all about honoring and serving our Dipsea elders, and with her contributions in her honor of the Dipsea, she was rewarded with the Jack Kirk Dipsea Demon Trophy in 2015. So it's not just her running record that makes my sister Colleen my favorite Dipsea hero. It's her heart. her love for the race and her love of the people who make up this race, and especially the volunteers who show up year after year to make sure this amazing tradition continues to thrive. For the last 25 years, I've worked with a great group of Dipsea volunteers to set up the race and roll out the race fences starting at 5 a.m. every Dipsea race morning. In fact, I'm usually the first person in Mill Valley, downtown Mill Valley. It's like a Twilight Zone or a science fiction movie, as though I'm the only one there and the aliens came and sucked up all the people. And then, thank God, the volunteers start to trickle in, which is like, oh, thank God. And the donuts and the coffee, that's helpful too. Anyway, the dips, I was going to say, but it always feels like no time has passed, because when the volunteers come in, you haven't seen them for a whole year. And, for years and years, that's the only time you see them. But the thing is, it feels like there's no time has passed, because we're just one big, loving Dipsea family. So when it comes down to the Dipsea, it's all about love. It's love. It's the love of people like my sister Colleen, the love of all the runners, and especially the love of all the volunteers who help make the Dipsea race the greatest race. Anyway. And if you want to volunteer, come see me.
Sharon referenced some of the trophies, that the Dipsea Demon Trophy, but make sure when the event finishes tonight, take a wander up by these tables here. We have some Dipsea Demon trophies, we've got some photos of Jack Kirk, but we've one trophy from 1922. I think it's a Dipsea Women's Hike trophy. It's amazing, so take a chance to come up here later. Now we've got the speaker that I am personally most excited about. Christopher Ciaschini, 8 years of age, doing his fourth Dipsea this year. And Christopher's going to tell the story, Mommy's Surprise.
Hi, I'm Christopher. I'm going to tell a story about my mom and the first year I ran my Dipsea. Back in 2022, I asked my mom, can I run the Dipsea? And she said yes, and she registered me. And the Dipsea called her, and they said, can he actually do it? And she said yes. I trained 2 days a week. And my mom trained with me. And when the Dipsea day came, I was a little nervous. And our plan was for her to catch me at mile 1. I started 14 minutes ahead of her. At mile 1, she only had gained half a minute on me. And she caught me at mile 6, right before 6. And the first thing I said, what do I do if I have to go pee? And she said, just pee on the side. And we stayed together for the rest of the race. And then I came off from her right at the end and beat her at the end. And it was so fun that I have done 2 more, and this will be my 3rd Dipsea. No, my 4th Dipsea. And I now practice with Dipsea kids, and my sister also runs now. And now I'm invitational. And this is my first year being invitational.
think my favorite photo from that year you did it first was the moment you caught up with him just after the Moors. I think that Tony has a photo, and it's one of my favorite photos from that year. And he had a smirk in his face because he was like, yeah, it took her this long. Okay, next up, and our final speaker, we have Hazel Wood and Hazel's story. My name is Hazel, and I'm a Dipsea addict.
So as Patrick said, my name is Hazel, and I'm a Dipsea addict. I'm Hazel Wood, I'm 74 years old, and I'm running my 42nd Dipsea. Why? Well, I'm going to tell you why I keep running the Dipsea, and how and why my why has changed over time. Some people stop running the Dipsea when they stop achieving their goals. I just changed my why. So I think you'd probably guess that it's important to know your why or your whys. I have 3 whys. My first why was goals. My first Dipsea was in 1981 when I was 30. And at the awards ceremony, I watched in awe as several of my Tamalpa friends received black shirts. In that moment, my first why was born. I wanted one too. 3 years later, I won my first black shirt. I went on to win 2 more and had a best time of 61:59. Eventually, my goal shifted to maintaining invitational status. And I'm guessing that several of you can relate to that. Then, as I got older and slower, and the younger and faster runners flew by me, my why shifted. And although I train hard and do my best effort on Dipsea Day, my 2 other whys have taken center stage. My second, and this is a huge why, is fun and community. I've shared many fun times and laughs with friends on the trail, sometimes at my expense. There was one time when we were training, and I slipped going over the creek at Muir Woods and landed in the creek up to my neck. My friends just couldn't stop laughing. Another time, we were trying out a shortcut that's now outlawed when I tripped, somersaulted, and landed flat on my back in the middle of a poison oak bush. I love the community spirit of the Dipsea, meeting people on the trail, and on the bus ride back from Stinson, you really meet some great characters. And these days, I just love how the faster, younger runners say words of encouragement to us slower runners as they pass us. My third why is that I've built a treasure trove of memories and special moments. Now, some memories I'd actually rather forget, like the one year that I got lost on the trail. I really did. It was the year where there was an old version of Suicide Hill, and I accidentally missed the entrance to the hill. And so I'm flying down this freshly plowed hill and looking around and thinking, where is everybody? And I got to the bottom and realized that the trail was all the way over to the right. So I had to bushwhack my way back over to the trail, of course through poison oak. I still finished, all scratched and torn up and blooded. My most vivid memory, however, is from 2003, when, accompanied by a motorcade and deafening applause, Jack Kirk, at age 96, walked to the finish line for the last time. He was such an inspiration. And although I've been thrilled with my black shirts and the Times in my early years, my most special and surprise moment was at the Dipsea in 2024, when I heard my name called to the podium to receive the Jack Kirk Trophy for dedication, perseverance, and performance over time. So, as a 42-year Dipsea addict, I've transitioned from a very personal why based on goals to appreciating the magic of fun, community, and memories. I could actually use a bit more memory because the reason I'm not wearing one of my black shirts today is that I couldn't remember where I've put them. So we British, we love tradition, and as we British say, cheers. Cheers to my husband, my Tamalpa friends, runners, Dipsea volunteers, and the Dipsea committee for enabling and supporting my Dipsea addiction. And what is your why?
Okay, well, now that everyone was actually so good with their timing, how many times did we have to play Barry? Twice, that was it, wow. So thank you all to all the speakers. Because we bought so much extra time for that, I'm going to tell a story as well. So to finish the evening, I would love to share an adaptation of the letter that I sent in with my own application this year. It kind of gives a nice outlook on my own Dipsea experience and an introduction to the 5 kids in our Dipsea Generations project. I won't tell you how much of a bribe I had to put in as well. Dear Dipsea Committee, first of all, thank you so much for organising and maintaining the Dipsea event. Without a doubt, my favourite race I've ever participated in. It's a race built on volunteers, so thank you all for the time you put in every year, bringing such joy to so many runners, their families, and the community. Missing the race last year was tough. My dad, Pat O'Leary, passed away on June 13, 2024, just a few days after the 113th Dipsea Race. But I'm grateful I was able to be there by his side, surrounded by family in his final days. Dad would have loved to see the Dipsea one year. He was heavily involved in youth athletics, setting up our local running club in southeastern Ireland. He travelled the country as the official starter at many Athletics Ireland events and was a race director at many cross-country events near home. Throughout my childhood, he drove all over the country. He drove myself, my siblings, and lots of youth from our area all over the country to sporting events. If Dad grew up in the Bay Area, I feel he would have been right at home in the Dipsea community. I see a bit of Dad in every one of the volunteers, the participants, the parents, and the supporters of the Dipsea, at the Dipsea. And I'm glad that I can run the Dipsea every year in honour of him. I see it as my own personal celebration of him and what he himself did for the running community. Through watching my parents as I grew up, I was inspired to be a community builder. From founding and managing the Irish Lacrosse League 20 plus years ago, to leading this November Project workout group when I first moved to San Francisco. Side note, that's how I met my collaborator, Tony, who's out here today. To highlighting stories of the different communities through documentary film. I appreciate what I've learned about the strength of sporting communities from them, from my parents, and that led us to this Dipsea Generations project. After this idea was burning in the back of my mind since I first raced the runners section back in 2019, I'm so glad to help tell the story of these young runners and their participation in the Dipsea Race. In Ireland, I was very fortunate to have the privileged upbringing where I had access to sport and running from an early age. It's really cool to now be able to bring that to new communities with this project. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being such staunch supporters of the project. Such exciting times ahead as the project falls into place. Now, I want to tell you about the 5 kids we're following at this year's race. Karina Arazon Lopez is our young athlete from Hayward, an inspiring young Latina woman. She was one of the first girls to run on the track and cross-country team at Mount Eden High School. Now, a senior, she's the girls' captain. Go Karina. The Dipsea will be her first race on the same week of her high school graduation. Talking with her mom, Lorena, and her coach, Skylar Hall, they are so excited about how sport is giving Karina the confidence to tackle big goals. Daniel Sacido from San Juan Bautista, it's about half an hour south of Gilroy, is a young runner to watch for the future. He found his way into trail running only 2 years ago and loves everything about the sport, the competition, the outdoor exploration, the community vibes. We interviewed Daniel and his parents at their home a few weeks ago, and I'm so impressed with this kid. Wise beyond his years, he was saying very profound things about the benefits of running and community. I'm so excited to see his future in the Dipsea and in running in general. Andre Sente, who's actually right here. So Andre Sente from San Rafael is a strong, fierce Dipsea competitor, a very talented soccer player, and an aspiring filmmaker of the future. I see the camcorder in your hand there. A long-time participant of the Dipsea Kids program. Andre now has his little brother now join him at the Dipsea Kids training runs. This year, Andre will be doing his 3rd Dipsea. In 2023, he finished 774th, and he made the invitational section. Last year, he was 407th. This year, he has some major goals, maybe finishing in the top 100. But honestly, I see a black shirt in this kid's future. Let's go, Andre. Lily Vasquez from Marin City is the youngest of our featured athletes, but also one of our most experienced Dipsea runners. Next week's race is going to be her 3rd Dipsea. We loved sitting down with Lily, chatting with her about Lego and Star Wars, how she joined Coach Anna, who is here, who is one of the Dipsea legends, I feel, how she joined Coach Anna and the Marin City Dipsea Kids program, and about going on adventures in the outdoors. Keep an eye out for Lily in the race this year. She'll be gunning for a new Dipsea PR, a place in Invitational, and maybe even beating her dad, Eduardo, who'll be doing his 13th Dipsea. And then finally, Irvin Anthony Rojas from Larkspur will be doing his 2nd Dipsea this year. This lad is such fun. He just radiates positivity. We sat to interview him and his mom, Samantha, and the main thing Anthony wanted to talk about was how fast his little brother, Julian, is. This is what the Dipsea is all about. Runners becoming mentors, mentors becoming runners, family and community. I love that the Dipsea has now become a family affair in Anthony's household, and actually in your household as well, Andre, with your little brother is keen. He wants to do it real bad this year, but he's too young. So the Dipsea Race has had such a positive effect on me, on the running community, and each of these 5 kids and their families. I hope this project will create opportunities for kids from all backgrounds to get involved in the Dipsea and to use trail running as a way to build their confidence, self-esteem, and appreciation for the outdoors, and to continue to build an inclusive, healthy, and prosperous trail running community here in the Bay Area. Thank you for your consideration. Signed, regards, all that. Paddy O'Leary. Can we get a big cheer for all of our speakers today? And a big cheer for Natalie and for all of the team here at the Mill Valley Library. And then one for the Dipsea Committee, the Dipsea volunteers, the people that make this race happen. And then if you want to keep an eye on how our project progresses, we do have a YouTube page, and we're going to be putting up we'll be putting up this, actually on the Mill Valley Library page, but we're going to put up all of our interviews on our YouTube page. Do give it a follow, and then we're hoping we're going to have the film done next November, and we're going to have a big party in the city, in one of the cinemas there, and we're going to tell you all about it. Thank you. Conveniently, the YouTube page, we have some QR codes at the desk that you can take a photo of it because we're very fancy. But it's the Dipsea Generations YouTube page. We'll see you all on Sunday morning. See you on the start line. Thank you all so much. And make sure to come up and see the trophies as well.